Hello, I am Lee Cragie, the Active Nation Commissioner for Scotland. Mine is an interesting post. It's joint funded between Transport and Health, and my agenda interestingly spans transport and health. Um, so my job is all about encouraging more people to be more active, more often outside. But you might have gathered that because it's funded by transport, this is largely focused on trying to encourage people to replace those short everyday journeys that they might undertake by car and by active mode instead, because it's generally understood that this is the way that we're going to create that modal shift across our country and make more people more active more often. So that is the premise of my role. But how did I get to be in this position? It's a really good question, because before I was the Active Nation Commissioner, I was a nomadic traveller by bike and a storyteller. I used to travel all over the world by bike, sometimes racing, sometimes just enjoying. And with my whole life packed on my bike, I was pretty evangelical about the pure joy that you can feel by living in this simple way, connected to nature and being physically active every day. And how did I get to that point? Well, before then, I was a professional bike racer for many years. And before that, a child and adolescent psychotherapist. I worked very closely with young people that had been excluded from school. And I used outdoor activities, and particularly mountain biking, to work one-to-one with those young men, usually, to try and establish more trusting relationships between them and adults, and therefore them and school. And so you might be wondering, well, how does this make her qualified to do this job? And I can say that absolutely categorically, the most important thing, the most important experience that I had today was working with those boys. They showed me that not everybody has had the privilege that I have had, both growing up and as an adult, to roam freely, to have this access to green space, to have that autonomy and that luxury of being able to travel self-supported, and to just access green space. These guys, they're stuck in city centres, and their streets are dominated by cars because they're from the most deprived areas, and we use their residential streets as rat runs to get places fast and easy in our big vehicles. And so I suppose I was traveling the world and I was thinking, well, this is amazing, but there's something missing. There's something that doesn't fit quite right with me about having all of this freedom and this autonomy. What am I contributing back? So I guess I missed those boys and what it was that they taught me about justice, about health equality and social justice. And so when this role came up, I thought, wow, great, let's have a think about this, because it did mean giving up quite a lot. And so I tussled with it a little bit. But then I saw this slide at a conference that I was at. It was a cycling conference, and it was 2018, and I just thought, God, if Scotland truly does have this at the core of what it is that they care about and what they're striving towards, then I want to be part of that. I want to be part of a country that is willing to expand its narrow focus away from growth domestic product, and start thinking about things in terms of collective well-being, how being happy and healthy is not necessarily the be-all and the end-all. And so I looked into it a little bit further, and lo and behold, we have a wealth of policies that back up this way of thinking. And I was so proud to think, wow, I could work alongside the people that put together these policies. Are the whole idea of this national performance framework that the Scottish Government has put together just links up all of the different government agencies, all of them, all up together across all ministerial portfolios, to all focus in on this one purpose: to create a more successful country with opportunities for all of Scotland to flourish through increased well-being, that comes first, and sustainable and inclusive economic growth. And so I was like, right, okay, well, if that is the case, then I'm all up for it. I'm going to throw everything at this 3-year post and see if I can actually help to make a difference. I was so naive. I had absolutely no idea about government workings at the time. I was a youth worker, but somebody who was passionate about the health and well-being aspects of what it was that I was doing. So it felt like a good start. But it quickly became apparent that maybe it wasn't going to be quite as easy as I thought. Yet this agenda overlaps a lot of these different sectors. Absolutely. You know, there's so many goals that are interconnected between human rights and culture and environment and health and education, and you know, they all come together. But I suppose what really excited me was the idea that the environment, health, the economy, and the environment could come together and really share these goals. If you've got the environment, which includes transport, obviously, you've got health, and you've got the economy, all sharing goals, then this felt like an excellent basis to actually push this. And so I was absolutely convinced that the political will, the policy is in place to make our country fairer, happier, healthier. And that just felt great to come from that starting place. It gave me real confidence. And yet we live in the real world. And so I then went out and started speaking to local authorities. This is pre-COVID. And I asked everybody in local authorities, okay, well, this is a no-brainer. Everyone agrees with it. So what is it that you need to get this job done? And those local authorities, it was really, really clear. There were clear themes across all of them. You said, local authorities said that they needed three things. They needed for the budgets to reflect that our political leaders are on board, and that came first and foremost. There's no way that you guys at local authority level are going to go out there and take the hits if you don't feel as though you're backed up by politics, and the way that is most obviously felt is if the budget is there to back you. You asked for a simplified process so that you could trial changing the priorities of our streets away from cars and towards people. The traffic regulation orders that exist at the moment are incredibly complicated, and were a real barrier for that. So that was really important thing that was asked. And then finally, the evidence that the majority of your constituents want this change. Why in the world would an elected member go out there and upset the people that keep them in the position of change maker? It made no sense. And so what's happened as a result of COVID is that actually, well, the first one, since COVID, the active travel budget was on the increase anyway. We've now got 500 million committed over the next 5 years, so that people can actually plan ahead during COVID. As a result of the national performance framework indicators, more money is being pumped into active travel. There was another 15 million recently announced. So those budgets really are reflecting what our political leaders think and feel, and that must be. Although some people will always say that it's not enough, it's a real indication of the momentum behind this agenda. This simplified process, you can trial stuff. Well, that happened in the Spaces for People emergency road space reallocation around COVID times. Local authorities had the possibility to just be like, okay, well, we need wider pavements so that people can stay apart from each other. We need to encourage more people to be active so that not everybody's driving, because the public transport system essentially was down. So that trial possibility was made available, and the money was made available to do that. And there's been some really cool things come out of that, you know, as a possibility to gather the evidence around that, you know, how popular have these measures been, because you can't know that until you've tried them and people actually understand what it is that you're talking about. And so that fits really neatly into 3, evidence that the majority of your constituents want this change. So there's been a lot of work done around how popular these measures have been, and overwhelmingly people are in favour of the Spaces for People measures. It depends where you look and how you look and how consultation was in each of these areas. But in general, on average, of the studies that I've seen, around 48% said that they were against and 66% in favour. So that gives real confidence, I think, to the idea that the majority of people want this change, and they understand that it's not fair, it's not healthy, and it's not sustainable. There's still arguments out there, isn't there? I've been involved in many street battles with high street traders, and I feel for them. I really, really do. They're like, don't take our parking spaces away. How are people going to come and shop on our high street? Everyone's going to go online. And I really felt for that. But the evidence base is there. You take away car parking and footfall increases, and when people are out of cars, they spend more money. And so there's an argument there, and some people don't believe it yet, but the facts are there. I've trying not to get into that argument anymore with people. Instead, I try to point them in these directions. I tried to have a discussion with them around the things that can't be argued with, the fact that these measures, this road reallocation towards active behaviours, you can't argue against the social justice implications of that, the closing of the inequalities gap. You can't argue that it's better for the environment, less people in polluting vehicles, and you can't argue that it's better for our mental and physical health. The more we move around, the more we can socially connect, the more we can sit outside a cafe and have a coffee without traffic racing by. We can reclaim our public realm, which is about so much more than just your physical health. It's about your emotional and social connection as well. And in doing so, the economy thrives. And that's and evidence of that can also be found. Well, there's a great document published by Living Streets, Pedestrian Pound, that goes into a bit more detail about how the economy thrives if you focus on these things. But there's also a wealth of evidence from countries that are ahead of us in this domain. Cities like Copenhagen, Ljubljana, Amsterdam, but closer to home too, in London and in Glasgow and France are going for it. So it's all out there to be found if you need evidence that this is the backup. And so to further this, like if we're talking about behaviour change, if we're talking about changing people's hearts and minds towards this agenda, then I suggest we steer completely away from any sort of conflict. We're all human beings, and COVID has shown us that we're all in this together, and we all want the same things. We want interconnectedness and we want joy, and that joy can be found in motion, in freedom, in creativity. We just need the spaces to allow that to happen. And so all of my objectives as Active Nation Commissioner are pretty much pivotal on school streets and the promotion of the closure of school streets to vehicles so that our young people have fair, equal access to the possibilities of being active, getting to school actively. And so there's been big drama, hasn't there, about whether or not we should reduce our built-up areas to a national default limit of 20 miles an hour. And I can totally see why not everybody is up for that. Not all local authorities are up for that. It would take a lot to enforce, especially as we've built these long, straight roads through our residential areas that nobody wants to slow down on. And a long, straight road, 20 miles an hour, feels really slow. But if we think about things in a different way, if we think about child mile per hour instead of 20 mile per hour, then maybe we've got something more to hang this off. There's focus now, all my focus, in fact, is on the promotion of reclaiming the public realm for people being active and for people undertaking active journeys, but also just for recreational joy. And I don't think we should be separating those things out anymore. This idea of play streets and child mile per hour zones is already happening in places like in Aberdeen, for example, in Union Street in Aberdeen, where pavements aren't really a thing, and the whole of the street is welcoming to all different forms of traffic. But the important thing here is the travel hierarchy. The important thing here is that anything on that street proceeds at walking pace. So children can just play everywhere. there's a legal speed limit of walking pace. Pedestrians have priority. Cyclists, cars, vans and lorries must give way. And that works. This works in southern Germany. This works across the world, and it does mean that people need to radically rethink what space is theirs and what their entitlement is. But what better way to encourage change than to spread the joy and explain this in terms of health and social justice for our young people, and then obviously the environment follows on from that. We managed to reduce our carbon emissions at the same time as a result. And so here's what I'm using as a lever to advocate change, both at grassroots level and to encourage more of our political leaders to join up their messaging. So it's all there in terms of policy, but there's still this resistance to really sort of to sharing, and I think that needs to change. And so there's little nuggets that change can take place on. And I think play streets and child mile an hour ideas and 20-minute neighbourhoods are places where we can do that. Very tangible, not really arguable too. And the good news is it's already happened. This is what a street in Aberdeen looked like back in the 1930s. If you scroll through all the historical archives, you can find play streets, designated play streets before the Second World War, all over all our towns and cities in Scotland. So cool. Kids they were given priority, and Curzon knew that. And there definitely has been a tipping point, but since then, and that has changed. But look at this. Look at the sociabilities. Look at the mutual understanding going on that street. If only we could reclaim some of that. Oh, we can. Look at this. It's totally possible, and it's happening already. And this is Aberdeen. So yeah, it absolutely is. It is possible, and yes, it is going to take some significant change in the way that we think about things. But if we can hold those three premises in our mind, we're doing this for social justice, we're doing this for health, and we're doing it for the environment. And ultimately, if we keep those images in our mind of those young people and the sorts of behaviours that we need to be embedding in the next generation in order to save our planet, and I'm not just talking environmentally, I'm talking as a population. We've got two crises happening at once here. We've got an environmental one and a health one. Here's something that will solve both of those crises at the same time. And so I just wanted to leave you with this. God, I would not be doing my job if what I was doing was making people feel guilty or angry or fearful, and putting their backs up against the wall and forcing change. There is going to be a little bit of stick. It can't all be carrot. But the last thing that we want to do is to guilt trip people into doing this. We're only going to do this, and it sounds so corny, but we're only going to do this. We're only going to make these changes with love. And that is the truth of it. We've got to think outside of our little narrow boxes. Everybody does it. We think about ourselves and our street and our family and our car trips. But if we can see the bigger picture, if we can see that what it is that we choose to do on a daily basis has a massive effect for people that might not otherwise have that choice, maybe in the next street down, or maybe on the other side of the world, if we're talking about climate change and biodiversity loss, then we might start to make some decisions fueled by love and by mutual care. And if COVID has shown us one thing, it's shown us that we can do that. So thank you very much for listening. I hope that's been of some use. And do feel free to get in touch with me if you want to discuss any of this, or if you want to spraff off about how difficult it is in your area to make these behavioural changes and how isolated and lonely it can feel. Do just drop me a line, because I know exactly what you mean. activenationcommissioner@gmail.com, or you can get me on social media, Lee Cragie _. Thanks very much.